Hello, children. So today I wanted to tell you all about Adam and Eve. When we open up the Bible, the very first book of the Bible is called Genesis, a word that means origins. The very first chapter talks about the way that God made everything. And in the first chapter, it has this wonderful way of describing the way God is. God says, "Let there be light." And there's a flash of light, and light comes into being. And then this same God, he proclaims, "Let there be some difference between the sky and the earth, between the earth and the sea. Let the sea be filled with all kinds of creatures, like fish, dolphins, turtles, I don't know, sea anemones. There's all kinds of stuff that's in the ocean, right?" And then he says, "Let the earth be filled with all kind of crawly things, like spiders and scorpions, and then maybe a little bit bigger, like mice, like maybe squirrels." And then he says, "And let there be animals all over, like cows and lions and giraffes and all the kinds of animals." And then God says, "Let them have trees and all the plants and shrubs and all the things that grow from the earth." And then he says, "Let us make human beings. We will make human beings in the image and likeness of God." Now that's a very interesting thing. It's like it's written in poetry. It's like code. You have to decode it a little bit. What does it mean that we're made in the image and likeness of God? Well, if I was going to make something that's in my image, I would make a painting that looks just like me. The only problem is all human beings look different. Some are tall, some are short, some are boys, some are girls. Some have long hair, some have gray hair, some have brown eyes, some have blue eyes. Everybody looks a little bit different from each other. And sometimes you can tell when people are from the same family because they have similar attributes. They look kind of alike. They have the same kind of nose or something like that. But for the most part, we all look different. So how is it that we, all of us, could be made in the image and likeness of God if we all look different from each other? This is where the poetry and the symbolism comes into play. There's something that all human beings have in common. That means if we did a compare and contrast, you could see what makes them the same and what makes them different. Let's play a game. Imagine for a moment that I have a dog and I have a cat. What is the same between the dog and the cat? Well, they both have 4 legs, they both have mouths, they both have ears, they both have eyes, they both have tails. What's different about the dog and the cat? Well, certainly they behave differently. Dogs love to be around a lot of people. They love to be together in groups. Cats tend to want to be on their own and just occasionally visit us, but for the most part, they're good all by themselves. Dogs love to dig things up in the yards. Not so much cats. Cats love to jump on top of things. Dogs, they like to go for a walk on a leash. Not so much cats. You try to walk a cat on a leash, it's not too happy. They're very different. And yet there's some things that are the same. We compare and contrast. Let's compare and contrast all human beings. Though there's a lot of things that make us different, what makes us the same? We all have a way of communicating. Is that like God? Yeah. God sometimes communicates with us, sometimes with signs and symbols, sometimes even with words. What else do all human beings have? Well, all human beings are smart. We think about things that are invisible, like oxygen. You can't see oxygen, but we think about things that I can't see or taste or feel. And we do all kinds of ways of checking to see if we're right about that. Does God think about invisible things? Sometimes, yeah. He thinks about angels. He thinks about our soul. Another thing that makes us different than all the other animals is that we're very smart in the sense of using the things around us to build houses. You know, I've heard of like a beaver making a house called a dam. I've heard about a bird making a nest, but I ain't never seen any animal make a skyscraper or a house with a roof and a gutter that catches the rain. So only human beings do that, but all human beings do that. Does God ever do that? Well, yeah, God created everything around us. He formed and shaped and made things into something even better than it would have been without Him. God's a creator. We're smart creators. God thinks about invisible things. We think about invisible things. And there's something else. We have something called free will. It means I have a choice in the matter. I can choose the way I dress. I can choose the way I behave. I can choose whether or not to do right or to do wrong. Dogs don't have much of a choice. They kind of choose whether they want to eat something or if they want to eat something else. But they don't really make a big choice, not like us. They never really think about their future. They just make immediate choices. We make big choices. We are free to do so. God is free. God didn't have to make us. God chose to make us. So being made in the image and likeness of God points to something very special about human beings that the other creatures, the animals and the rocks and the plants and the fish, they don't have the same thing in common with us. Something makes us special. In the second chapter of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, there's another whole story of creation. This author uses another kind of poetry, another kind of way of thinking of God. He says, God put his hands into the dirt, into the clay, and formed Adam, and then blew into his mouth and nostrils the breath of life. And I like to imagine this clay little dolly all of a sudden coming to life. Hi, everyone. This is a poetry. Obviously, that's not how people come into being. There are no dollies that come to life. But the story tells us something very interesting, that God's hands were in there, forming and shaping us. And I believe maybe it's not so much his hands, but there's a lot about God that is forming and shaping us in ways that he didn't even need hands. He has this way of forming and shaping my whole life by simply opening up opportunities and closing the door on other things. And through that love that he has for us, the blessings that he gives us, the people he puts in our lives, he changes and shapes us. More than that, we would never have life if it wasn't for the power of God. God gave us life. You know, all of this, my skin, my bones, my muscles, all the things that make me a person, well, it's only stuff. I could take a whole bunch of stuff and make a dolly, make a clay little doll, but I could never bring it to life. So something that was given to us was the breath of life. Today we talk about it as our soul. My soul is connected with God as a gift of life that he gave me. In that second chapter of Genesis, God made Adam, and then he gave him all the presents. He gave him the trees, he gave him the birds, he gave him the fish, he gave him the rivers, he gave him the mountains. But Adam looked around and said, I'm lonely. Isn't there anything that's like me around here? I mean, the bear is neat, but the bear never talks to me. The mountain is awesome, but it never thinks about how far away is the moon. I don't know. I just wish I had somebody I could share all of this wonderful things with. And God heard his prayer, and according to the poetry, made Adam fall asleep, and from his side pulled out a rib, and then from that rib he turned it into the woman, Eve. And when he wakes up in the morning, he's like, oh, I don't know, I'm a little bored today. Wonder what I'm going to find. And he sees her for the first time. Wow, isn't she beautiful? What are you? What kind of thing are you? She says, I'm not a thing. I'm a person. Alas, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, one equal to me, someone with whom I can share everything. And Adam and Eve formed the very first family. They were husband and wife, mom and dad.